To make sure he could die precisely in the hospital and that all of his organs remained intact, he called the emergency line before ending his life.
There's been a suicide.
Who's the victim?
I am.
Then he lay down in a bathtub filled with ice, enduring the bone-chilling cold, and poured in the jellyfish he had prepared in advance. This jellyfish was known as the box jellyfish, one of the world's most venomous creatures. Just one could be lethal enough to kill 60 adults, and once poisoned, there were only 4 minutes left for emergency treatment. Its aggression was also terrifyingly strong. In the blink of an eye, the jellyfish's tentacles had already climbed onto his arm, beginning to release their toxins. Very soon, an excruciating wave of pain surged through his body. As the venom spread inside him, he writhed uncontrollably, clutching the shower curtain with all his strength, struggling in torment. On the floor, there was a bold warning written out, "Beware of the jellyfish in the bathtub. Take me to the hospital immediately." And all of this had only one purpose, to atone for his mistakes. Because the night before, when he glanced at his phone while driving, his lapse had caused 7 lives to be lost, including the woman he loved most. Even though the police determined that the other truck's reckless driving was the official cause of the tragedy, the guilt in his heart would not allow him to forgive himself. To make amends for this unbearable remorse, Tim decided to use his own body as a sacrifice, to give away 7 pounds of flesh and save 7 lives, completing his redemption. Tim stole his brother's identification and posed as Ben, and after 2 months of careful searching, he finally put together a list of chosen recipients. The first was a blind salesman named Ezra, who lived in darkness. Ben first called him, deliberately picking faults in the product Ezra was selling, then insulted him with sharp and cruel words. Yet, in the face of Ben's offensive provocation, Ezra did not show anger, but instead responded with even more patience, helping to solve the problem. But Ben did not stop there. He escalated his cruelty by mocking Ezra's blindness, taunting that he would never see light again. He did not believe a blind man could hear such insults and remain unmoved.
"It's blue, sir."
It's blue, sir. Say what you want to say.
React. Say what you want to say to me.
"Thank you for calling Cheyenne Meats."
That's not what you want to say, you coward. You coward. You blind, vegan beef salesman, virgin,
Goodbye,
coward.
Mr.
Say
Collins.
what you want to say.
After hanging up, Ben could no longer hold back his breakdown. He despised himself for lashing out so harshly at such a gentle and kind man. He was about to decide to give Ezra his eyes as an apology, but he hesitated, realizing that workplace politeness alone was not enough to prove Ezra was truly a good man. So Ben chose to follow Ezra, secretly observing his behavior to see whether he truly lived with kindness and honesty. Gradually, Ben discovered that Ezra loved music deeply, often playing piano quietly in restaurants. Such beautiful melodies could only come from someone with inner peace. He also noticed that when Ezra interacted with a woman he liked, every move was careful and restrained, like he feared even the smallest gesture might bring discomfort to her.
You gonna ask her out? The waitress.
No.
You never know.
Oh. I don't think she sees me.
Ezra's responses carried a mixture of sorrow and realism. In this noisy world, we are easily distracted by illusions, afraid to face our flaws, terrified to accept our imperfections, because admitting them means breaking the false image of perfection we construct, and confronting the broken real self within. Yet Ezra, living in darkness, could still face his life with a smile and resilience. His very existence was like a mirror, reflecting our weakness and avoidance. Ben was certain Ezra was a man worthy of help. The second person he investigated was a middle-aged woman named Connie, whose marriage had failed. After giving birth, her appearance and figure no longer looked the same, and she long suffered neglect and abuse from her husband. Just a few days earlier, she had been beaten so severely that 3 ribs were broken, and the double trauma of body and spirit nearly broke her completely. Although she tried many times to leave, every attempt ended with even more brutal violence. She longed desperately to escape her violent home, but with 2 innocent children to protect, she was trapped in a painful dilemma. When Ben learned of her situation, he was filled with sympathy. He solemnly promised Connie that he would give her enough money to take the children away, so she could start a brand new life without fear. But Connie, wounded so deeply, was like a frightened deer, wary of everyone. She suspected Ben might be a spy sent by her husband, and her fear made her believe such kindness must hide a trap. So before Ben could even finish speaking, Connie, overcome with emotion, demanded that he leave. Her eyes showed despair and helplessness, as if the entire world were against her. Ben's heart was full of pity and sorrow, and he knew it would take patience to earn her trust. So he left his card and walked away. Yet, to his surprise, that very night Connie called him. Her voice was weak and shaking, mixed with sobs, telling Ben she had once again suffered her husband's cruelty and had even been thrown out of her home. Without hesitation, Ben rushed to help her. He gave her a seaside address, telling her it was a safe haven far from violence, a place filled with warmth and love where she and her children could begin again. Then Ben gave her his own car. It was not just a car, it was the key to escaping the nightmare and driving toward a new future. But Connie, still fearful, hesitated to start the engine, afraid this gift was just an illusion. Ben noticed her doubt and gently reminded her to look at the two innocent children in the back seat, comforting her that even if she could not think of herself, she had to think of their future. Finally, Connie gathered her courage and accepted this gift, driving along the winding coast toward the north, with a spark of hope in her heart. In the end, as Ben directed, Connie arrived at a beautiful seaside house. Inside, on the table, she found a contract and a letter. In the letter, Ben explained everything, telling her that as long as she signed her name, the house would belong to her. The only condition was that she must never contact him again. Because Ben believed he was a sinner, unworthy of praise and gratitude, he chose to punish himself in this way. And he also hoped to give Connie and her children a brand new beginning. Perhaps true goodness never needs to be loudly proclaimed, nor dressed up with pretense and show. Connie was deeply moved by Ben's kindness, and the shadows in her heart gradually began to lift. She ran freely with her children along the wide beach, their bell-like laughter echoing in the sea breeze. From that moment on, they would live by the sea, watching spring flowers bloom, fully enjoying this hard-earned freedom, feeling the gentle touch of the ocean wind and the warm light of the sun. Meanwhile, Ben continued searching for his next person to save. This time he came to a nursing home, where the director was a man with kindness and responsibility. Yet unfortunately, he was suffering from a terminal illness and urgently needed a healthy heart to survive. Because Stewart, the director, owed a great deal in taxes, Ben appeared before him in the role of an IRS officer collecting debts. Stewart begged Ben, pleading for a 6-month extension. And he spoke earnestly of the nursing home's hardships, explaining that he needed money to care for the helpless elderly people. Ben was very puzzled, because when he looked straight at Stewart, he noticed that his eyes kept dodging. Ben thought to himself, this was clearly the look of someone lying. Stewart must be hiding some shameful secret. After Stewart left, Ben seized the chance to visit an elderly woman named Inez, hoping to learn her true opinion of Stewart. Sure enough, Inez, with trembling hands, wrote down a list of Stewart's wrongdoings, telling Ben that every time she took the medicine he gave her, she felt dizzy and sleepy, and if she refused to take it, she would be beaten. So she endured the suffering in silence. Hearing this, Ben's sense of justice burned fiercely. With a grave expression, he solemnly promised Inez that he would help her seek justice. Inez was so moved she could not speak. Only her lips trembled slightly. Then, under Ben's persistent questions, Inez bravely wrote down more of Stewart's cruel acts, her words cutting like sharp blades, piercing through Stewart's hypocritical mask. Remembering the painful experiences, Inez began to weep uncontrollably. Ben felt deep compassion, gently carried Inez out of the room, and sternly ordered the caregivers to examine her injuries carefully. Facing this heartless director, Ben's eyes turned cold and resolute. He angrily warned Stewart that he would visit Inez regularly, and if he discovered any more problems, Stewart would not be forgiven. Ben never expected that, in this world, someone could disguise cruelty under the name of kindness, fulfilling selfish desires without shame. The heart he had once planned to donate selflessly had almost been given to a man cloaked in false virtue. His anger flared like blazing fire, surging to the skies, but time was running short, and soon he locked onto his third target. It was a hockey coach named George, whose kidneys were failing, and if no donor could be found, His life would soon reach its end. Yet even in this condition, he remained at his post, tirelessly training his students. Even more touching, despite his own financial hardship, he used his modest pension to support several orphans. In this complex world, there are those who, even in suffering, still strive to bring hope to others. Ben was deeply moved by George's selflessness and resilience. Without hesitation, he decided to donate one of his kidneys to George, but George was puzzled, unable to understand why a stranger would be so generous to him.
Because you are a good man.
No, really.
Even when you don't know that people are watching you.
Hearing Ben's reply, George smiled faintly and asked no more questions, because both of them believed that, in this world, some kindness does not need words to explain. Next, Ben found another person in need. It was a young boy with leukemia, and to pay for his treatment, his family had spent almost everything. Yet despite their desperate circumstances, the family never abandoned him. After several days of learning about them, Ben was moved by their warmth. To stop the illness from further consuming the boy's fragile body, he signed an agreement with the doctors to donate his bone marrow to Nicholas. Nicholas was fortunate. Ben's bone marrow was a perfect match. The procedure itself was not complicated, but in order not to affect future organ donation, Ben refused anesthesia to ease the pain. So throughout the operation, he had to endure the agony, as if sharp blades were cutting through his body, feeling the marrow slowly drawn out of him. When the surgery ended, Ben was in such pain he could hardly stand. Every step felt like carrying a crushing weight, and he could not straighten his back. But he knew he could not rest, because the other organ recipients had no time to lose. Their lives were racing against the clock. Ben had to quickly find the last person who could receive his heart, to complete his final mission in life. This time he chose a woman named Emily, who suffered from a congenital heart disease. After years of illness, she was burdened with heavy debts. Ben once again pretended to be an IRS officer, arranged to meet her, and told her she needed to repay the huge tax debt from her hospital stay. Emily had just been discharged. Her body was weak, and she had no ability to repay. They ended the meeting in silence. But that was only Ben's initial test, and the next day he went to Emily's house again. It happened that Emily was out walking her dog, and seeing that she was unwell, Ben warmly stepped forward to help. In this brief interaction, Emily felt his kindness and care, and she gradually let down her guard, even inviting Ben into her home to confide about her financial struggles and health. In their conversation, Emily unexpectedly discovered that Ben seemed unconcerned about her tax issues, but instead cared more about her health, and even specifically explained a way to delay the payment of taxes. As he left, he handed her a card, promising that if she ever needed help, she could always call him.
Why do I get the feeling you're doing me a really big favor right now?
Because I get the feeling that you really deserve it.
After Ben left, Emily stood quietly, gazing at his figure as he walked farther away. In that moment, a warm current rose in her heart. Since being tormented by illness, her savings had long been drained, and friends, afraid she would ask to borrow money, gradually cut ties with her. She had not received care from anyone for a very long time, and Ben's appearance was like a warm and bright light, illuminating her darkened world, unlocking the heart she had closed for so long. But the next morning, the cruel illness suddenly attacked, and the violent pain made her lose consciousness instantly. Fortunately, a kind passerby rushed her to the hospital. When Emily opened her eyes again, she was lying on a hospital bed, surrounded by the pungent smell of disinfectant. In that moment, she truly felt the terror of death drawing closer and closer. In this place where she had no one to rely on, the only person Emily could think of was Ben, the man who had given her warmth. Through the long, sleepless night, tossing and turning, she called Ben, pouring out her fear and despair. Ben heard the desperation in Emily's voice, and he knew it was the same as what he felt inside. But Emily was a good person. She deserved to go on living. So Ben softly comforted her over the phone while hurrying to the hospital, even telling her a gentle story to help her fall asleep. In his company, Emily slowly relaxed her tense nerves, and her fear of death gradually faded with his tender words. When Ben arrived at the ward, she had already fallen asleep. He carefully removed the phone from her ear, and as he gazed at Emily's peaceful face, a wave of indescribable emotion filled his heart. At that special moment, he decided to reveal his secret to Emily. That night, Ben sat by her bedside, silently keeping watch over her until dawn. The next morning, when Emily woke up and saw Ben still by her side, she was overwhelmed with emotion, and she could not help but reach out her hand to gently touch this stranger, who nevertheless brought her warmth. At that very moment, the doctor brought her devastating news. Her condition had worsened, and without a matching heart, her life would end within a month. Then the doctor handed her a pager, speaking with sadness, telling her that if it ever rang, it meant a donor heart was available. But they both knew how slim that hope was. The most frightening thing in the world must be knowing the time of your own death. That fear surged like a tide in Emily's mind, mercilessly tormenting her fragile spirit. Holding back her tears, she gripped Ben's hand tightly, begging him not to leave. In the days that followed, Ben kept his promise, staying with Emily almost every moment, never leaving her side. They weeded the garden together, enjoying the simple joy of labor. In their leisure time, they walked hand in hand on the hillside, the breeze gently carrying the fragrance of flowers and grass, and their free steps moved as their hearts desired. On a golden meadow bathed in sunlight, they sat side by side, opening their hearts, sharing everything without reservation. Gradually, Ben's originally bleak life began to show a glimmer of light because of this warmth. His determination to die wavered unknowingly under the weight of this deep affection. With Emily's companionship, his negative attitude toward life quietly disappeared, replaced by a beautiful longing for the future. He began to picture a life with Emily, weaving a vision of happiness and tenderness together. But whenever night fell, his joy was swallowed once more by darkness. Those sorrowful memories surged like tides, haunting him like nightmares, leaving him unable to escape the shadows of his past. To him, it was a wound that would never heal. The memory of that car crash grew stronger every day, an unerasable scar. The horrific scene clung to his mind like a nightmare, and each recollection stung like salt on a wound. Although Emily's presence made him long for the future, he knew that her fragile heart could not sustain their love. From the very beginning, this love was destined to be a struggle with no outcome. Perhaps for Ben, sacrificing himself was the only right choice. By giving up his life, he could both atone for his past mistakes and save Emily's fragile future. So he found his most trusted friend Dan, revealed his entire plan, and asked Dan to handle all his affairs after he was gone. But after listening, Dan's once calm face instantly twisted. He suddenly stood up and shouted angrily at Ben.
I've known you my whole damn life! Okay? This is not something you do every day.
Their friendship was as deep as the sea. How could he just watch Ben walk toward his end? He did not want to, and could not, accept the heavy truth of losing Ben. Yet under Ben's firm and unshakable gaze, Dan knew that all persuasion and pleading were useless. So in the mix of grief and helplessness, he eventually agreed to this entrusted request. The next day, Ben dressed formally and met Emily one last time. Late at night, he still gently soothed her to sleep. And as he looked at her peaceful face, his heart was filled with both reluctance and resolve. He could no longer endure the endless waiting and torment, so he ran through the heavy rain, desperately rushing to Emily's doctor. With a trembling voice, he urgently asked the doctor what the chances were that Emily could survive if a suitable heart couldn't be found.
3? 5%? I know. I'm sorry. I wish the numbers were higher.
Thank you. Thank you.
After hearing the doctor's answer, Ben's heart sank into the abyss, and the faint hope inside him was completely extinguished. He understood he had wandered too long in the darkness. Only redemption could bring light. It was time to begin his plan. In the pouring rain, he took out his phone and called Dan, telling him the time had come. Then, dragging his weary body, he returned to his rented motel and called Ezra, sincerely apologizing for his earlier rudeness. At last, he told Ezra to keep his phone line open because someone would soon contact him to arrange the eye surgery. After the call, Ben forced himself to stay calm and dialed the emergency number for himself. After everything was arranged, he looked at his watch to make sure the time was precise, then opened the freezer, took out the ice, and poured it all into the bathtub. Enduring the freezing cold, he slowly lay down in the tub, then placed the venomous jellyfish beside him. As the toxin entered his body, the memory of the car crash flashed again in his mind. To avoid disturbing the neighbors, he used all his strength to suppress his cries. Under the torture of pain, his consciousness slowly sank, until at last he no longer felt anything. In the end, he completed his redemption, and the ambulance rushed him to the hospital. Though his life had ended, thanks to the protection of the ice, his organs remained intact. At the same time, Emily was awakened by a sudden sound. It was the pager delivering a signal of hope. She wanted to share the good news with Ben immediately, but when she turned, the man who had soothed her to sleep was gone without a trace. Not long after, Emily was taken into surgery. Her eyes shone with light as she began to dream of a happy future with Ben. But she did not know that lying beside her in that very moment was the man she loved, Ben. Hours later, as the flat line on the monitor began to pulse again, Ben's heart was beating strongly in Emily's chest. From that moment on, he would live forever in Emily's heart, in the name of love. After Emily fully recovered, Ben's brother came to her with indescribable feelings, handing over the letters Ben had left behind. In the letter, Ben poured out the entire truth of his plan for redemption. He gave his eyes to a salesman who loved life, granting him the chance to see again. His lungs went to his brother, who suffered illness, and his liver gave new life to a kind woman at a shelter. His house sheltered a wife who had suffered abuse. His bone marrow gave hope to a child whose life had just begun. His kidney gave strength to a selfless hockey coach, helping him continue his journey, and that most selfless and warm heart was now beating strongly in Emily's body. When Emily learned the truth, she could no longer hold back her emotions. Her eyes filled with tears, and a warm stream silently rolled down her cheeks. As time passed, by chance Emily met Ezra. By then he had become a true piano teacher, with those eyes once clouded in darkness now shining brilliantly, always revealing the beauty of music and the strength of life. After the performance, the entire audience erupted in applause. Emily felt as if drawn by an invisible force, slowly walking toward Ezra. When she looked into those familiar yet unfamiliar eyes, there was no need for words. Ezra understood everything. His eyes recognized the heart beating within her chest.
Must be Emily.
It was Ben's heart. It was their shared memory and love. His heart responded to the deep gaze shining from those very eyes. Those were Ben's eyes, a tacit connection, an understanding beyond words. The film is titled 7 Pounds, its meaning profound and thought-provoking. God created the world in 7 days, and Ben destroyed his life in 7 seconds, burdened with 7 sins. Then he used 7 pounds of flesh to save 7 lives and earned 7 measures of redemption. His heart was like a burning star, carrying endless love and kindness. His liver was like fertile soil, nurturing hope without end. His bone marrow was like a flowing stream, carrying the source of life. His house was a strong and warm haven, sheltering those caught in the storm. His kidneys and lungs were like loyal guardians, doing all they could to extend life for others. His eyes were like a shining lighthouse, lighting up a world of darkness, and his soul ran through it all, giving everything profound and noble meaning. Those 7 pounds were not just a part of his body. They were the entire weight of his life. They were the testimony of his farewell to this world, and the anthem he composed with his life. The film leaves us with a profound and eternal question. How should we balance the width and the length of life? Should we, like Ben, in a limited lifetime use selfless devotion to expand the width of life, making it full of meaning? Or should we chase the length of life, spending our years in ordinary days? I think, perhaps in this world, no one is God, but anyone can choose to become an angel.